AITA for refusing to attend my boyfriend's family dinner after they kept comparing me to his ex? Hi everyone. I'm honestly not sure if I'm overreacting or if I've just been ignoring a bunch of red flags for too long. My boyfriend thinks I'm being dramatic, but I feel like I've been patient for almost a year and I finally snapped. So, AITA for refusing to go to my boyfriend's family dinner after they keep comparing me to his ex? For context, I'm 27F and my boyfriend Ethan is 29M. We've been together for a little over a year. When we first started dating, everything was honestly great. Ethan is funny, thoughtful, and when we're alone together, he's genuinely one of the kindest people I know. But there's one massive problem. His family, and more specifically, his ex-girlfriend, Lily. Now, before anyone asks, Lily and Ethan dated for almost 5 years. They broke up about 2 years before Ethan and I met. From what Ethan told me early on, the breakup wasn't dramatic or messy. According to him, they just grew apart. But apparently his family did not get the memo. The first time I met his parents should have been my first warning. About 3 months into our relationship, Ethan invited me to dinner at his parents' house. I was nervous but excited. I brought a bottle of wine and even baked brownies because Ethan told me his mom liked homemade desserts. His parents live about 20 minutes outside the city in this big suburban neighborhood. When we walked in, his mom, Karen, greeted us at the door. She seemed nice enough at first. She hugged Ethan, gave me a polite smile, and thanked me for bringing dessert. Then she said the first thing that would become a very familiar sentence. Oh, brownies. Lily used to bake those for Ethan all the time. I laughed awkwardly because I didn't know what else to do. Ethan just kind of chuckled and said something like, "Mom, come on." I figured it was just a small slip. I was wrong. Throughout dinner, Lily came up constantly. Not in a casual, "Oh, he used to date someone" way. More like she was the gold standard of girlfriends. Karen mentioned how Lily used to help cook Sunday dinners. Ethan's dad mentioned how Lily loved their dog. At one point, Ethan's younger sister, Claire, literally said, "Lily would have loved this restaurant." I remember sitting there thinking, why does everyone keep bringing her up? To Ethan's credit, he did try to redirect the conversation a couple times, but he never really shut it down. After dinner, when we got back to my apartment, I brought it up. I told him it made me uncomfortable how often Lily came up. Ethan apologized and said his family just takes time to warm up to new people. They were really close to her, he said. It'll get better. I believed him. For a while, things actually did seem fine. When it was just Ethan and me, our relationship was really good. We went on trips, watched movies together, did normal couple stuff. He stayed at my apartment most nights. My friends liked him. My coworkers thought he was great. So I tried not to focus on the family thing too much. But then the second dinner happened. This was about 2 months later. Ethan's parents hosted a barbecue and invited a bunch of relatives. I told myself I was overthinking things from the first dinner. I should have trusted my instincts. About an hour into the barbecue, Ethan's aunt asked me where I worked. I told her I'm a graphic designer. She smiled and said, "Oh, that's nice." Lily was an interior designer. She has amazing taste. Then later, Ethan's cousin asked if I liked hiking. Before I could even answer, Claire jumped in with, "Lily loved hiking." Ethan and Lily used to go every weekend. At that point, I could literally feel my face getting hot. I started wondering if anyone in this family even cared who I was, or if I was just the replacement. Later that day, something happened that really stuck with me. Karen pulled Ethan aside in the kitchen while I was outside talking to some of the cousins. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the window was open and I could hear them. Karen said she's nice, but Lily just fit in better with the family. I remember standing there feeling like someone punched me in the stomach. Ethan didn't defend me. He just said, "Mom, drop it." Not, "That's not true." Not, "I love her." Just drop it. After that barbecue, I told Ethan again that the comparisons were really bothering me. He apologized again and promised he'd talk to his family. For a while, things were quiet. Then about 3 months ago, Ethan's sister Claire had a birthday dinner. And that night is when I realized something important. They weren't just comparing me to Lily. They wanted Ethan to get back together with her. During the dinner, Claire mentioned that Lily had recently moved back to town. Karen immediately got excited and said we should invite her over sometime. Then she looked right at Ethan and said, "You two were so good together." The entire table got weirdly quiet. Ethan just awkwardly laughed and said, "Mom, that's not happening." But the damage was already done. On the drive home, I asked him directly if his family still talked to Lily. He admitted they followed each other on social media and occasionally messaged her. That was the first time I actually got angry. I told him it was disrespectful that his family clearly preferred his ex, and he never really put a stop to it. Ethan insisted I was reading too much into things. They're just nostalgic, he said. Nostalgic. For his ex. Right in front of his current girlfriend. After that night, I started dreading every family event. And unfortunately, the worst one was still coming. About 2 weeks ago, Karen announced she was hosting a big family dinner. Apparently, Lily had recently gotten a new job in town, and Karen wanted to celebrate her. When Ethan told me about the dinner, I asked a simple question. Is Lily going to be there? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He eventually admitted his mom had mentioned inviting her, but he said he didn't think she'd actually do it. I told him very clearly that if Lily was there, I was not going. He said I was being dramatic and that I should at least try to get along with his family. But after almost a year of constant comparisons, I honestly felt like I had nothing left in me. 3 days before Ethan's family dinner, I ran into Daniel. Daniel and I grew up in the same town. We went to the same high school and were part of the same friend group for years. He was the kind of person everyone liked. Funny, easy to talk to, and the type who always remembered little details about people. We were really close during our last 2 years of school. And yes, I had a huge crush on him. After graduation, Daniel moved to another state for college, and we slowly lost touch like a lot of people do after high school. Over the years, we followed each other on social media and occasionally liked each other's posts, but that was about it. I honestly hadn't thought about him much in a long time. Until that day. I had stopped at a small coffee shop near my office during lunch. I was standing in line scrolling through emails when someone behind me said my name. I turned around and there he was. Daniel looked almost exactly the same, just older in the way people do when they grow into themselves. Same smile, same messy dark hair, just a little more mature. For a second, I was so surprised I didn't even know what to say. Then we both just started laughing. Apparently he had moved back to town about a month earlier because of a new job. We ended up sitting together after ordering coffee and catching up for almost an hour. It was honestly really easy talking to him again. Like no time had passed. He asked about my job, my apartment, how long I'd been in the city. I told him about Ethan, and that I'd been in a relationship for about a year. He seemed genuinely happy for me. But at one point he jokingly said, "Your boyfriend better be treating you well or I'm going to be disappointed." I laughed it off at the time, but the comment stuck in my head longer than I expected. When we finally left the coffee shop, Daniel said we should catch up again sometime. Maybe dinner with some of the old group, he suggested. I said that sounded great, and we exchanged numbers before heading back to work. Now fast forward to the night before Ethan's family dinner. I was at my apartment cooking dinner when Ethan came over looking stressed. The first thing he said was, "My mom invited Lily." I just stared at him. For a second, I honestly thought he was joking. "You told her that made me uncomfortable," I said. "I know," he replied quickly. "I told her it wasn't a good idea." "Then why is she still coming?" Ethan sighed like this was somehow an inconvenience for him. "My mom says she's basically family. She didn't think it would be a big deal." Not a big deal. His ex-girlfriend, who his entire family clearly adored, was going to be at dinner. And I was just supposed to sit there and smile. I asked Ethan if he told his mom that I might not come if Lily was there. He hesitated again, which told me he hadn't. That was the moment something inside me snapped a little. I told him I wasn't going. Ethan immediately got frustrated. "You're really going to skip a family dinner because of this? Because of this?" I repeated. "You're making it a bigger deal than it needs to be." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. For almost a year, I had been dealing with his family constantly comparing me to his ex. And now he expected me to sit at a dinner table with her while they probably continued doing the same thing. I asked him a very simple question. Why is it so hard for your family to respect your current relationship? Instead of answering, he said something that I will probably never forget. They're just used to Lily. Used to Lily. Like I was the temporary substitute. We argued for almost an hour that night. Eventually, Ethan left saying he hoped I would cool down and reconsider. But I didn't. The next evening when the dinner started, I was sitting on my couch. And honestly, for the first hour I felt relieved. No awkward conversations. No uncomfortable comparisons. Just peace. Then my phone started buzzing. First it was Ethan calling. I ignored it. Then came the text. Ethan, where are you? Ethan, my mom keeps asking about you. Ethan, this is embarrassing. That last message irritated me. Embarrassing for who? Because from my perspective, the embarrassing thing was inviting your son's ex-girlfriend to dinner while he's in a relationship. About 20 minutes later, Claire texted me. Claire, so you're really not coming? I didn't respond. Then another message popped up that made my stomach drop. Claire, Lily's here by the way. She asked about you. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wondered what exactly Lily had been told about me. Did she even know Ethan and I were together? Or had his family framed it like I was some random girl he was casually dating? Around 9 p.m., Ethan called again. This time I answered. The moment I picked up, I could hear loud voices and music in the background. Seriously, he said. Seriously what? You couldn't come for one dinner? I asked him if Lily was still there. He paused. Yes, that told me everything I needed to know. Then he said something that made my jaw drop. She's been really nice, actually. I think you two would get along. I honestly didn't even know how to respond to that. After everything his family had done, he thought the solution was for me to become friends with the woman they clearly preferred. I told him I wasn't discussing this while he was at the dinner and hung up. I spent the rest of the night trying not to think about what was probably happening at that table. Update. The next morning, Ethan came over to my apartment, and that was the conversation that finally ended our relationship. He walked in looking annoyed more than anything else, like I had inconvenienced him. The first thing he said was, "You really embarrassed me last night." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I understand why you were upset." Just that I embarrassed him. I remember staring at him and realizing something that should have been obvious much earlier. Ethan wasn't angry at his family. He was angry at me for not tolerating them. I asked him a very simple question. Did your mom invite Lily knowing it would upset me? He sighed and said she didn't think it was a big deal. That's not what I asked. He hesitated, and that hesitation gave me my answer. Then I asked the question that really mattered. Are you going to set boundaries with your family or not? Ethan frowned. What kind of boundaries? I couldn't believe I even had to explain it. For starters, not inviting your ex to family events while you're in a relationship. Not constantly comparing me to her. Not talking about how perfect she was in front of me. Ethan rolled his eyes slightly. They're just talking about the past. No, I said calmly. They're disrespecting your current relationship. Then he said something that basically sealed the fate of our relationship. I'm not going to start a huge fight with my family over something this small. Something small. That's when I realized we were never going to see this situation the same way. I had spent a year trying to be patient, understanding, and respectful. But Ethan expected me to keep swallowing my discomfort, so his family could continue pretending Lily was still part of their lives. So I told him we were done. Just like that. I'm breaking up with you. Ethan blinked at me like he thought I was joking. Come on. I'm serious. He laughed. Actually laughed. You're just upset about dinner. You'll calm down in a couple days. That reaction honestly hurt more than anything else, because it showed he didn't believe I was capable of making a real decision. He thought I was throwing a tantrum. I told him again that I was serious and asked him to leave. Ethan didn't argue much after that. He just shook his head like I was being dramatic and said, "Call me when you're done being mad." Then he left. And that was the last real conversation we had for weeks, because Ethan never reached out again. No apology. No attempt to fix things. Nothing. At first, that hurt more than I expected. Part of me wondered if maybe our relationship meant less to him than I thought. But around the same time, something else happened. Daniel texted me. He was organizing a small get-together with some of our old high school friends who had recently moved back to town. Nothing crazy, he wrote. Just drinks and catching up. Normally, I might have said no, because I was still feeling pretty emotionally drained after the breakup. But something in me wanted a distraction. So I said yes. That night ended up being one of the most unexpectedly healing experiences I'd had in a long time. The gathering was at a small bar. When I walked in, a few familiar faces immediately recognized me and started waving. It had been years since I'd seen some of them, but the vibe was so relaxed and welcoming. No tension, no awkward comparisons, no feeling like I had to prove myself. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. Daniel greeted me with a big hug and introduced me to a few people who had joined the group later. We spent hours talking about old memories, stupid things we did in school, and where everyone's lives had taken them. Around midnight, most of the group started leaving, but Daniel and I stayed behind talking. We were both a little tipsy at that point, which probably made the conversation more honest than it otherwise would have been. He eventually noticed I seemed quieter than earlier. Okay, he said, leaning back in his chair. Something's bothering you. I tried to brush it off, but Daniel has always been weirdly good at reading people. Come on, he said. Talk to me. So I did. I told him everything. About Ethan. About his family constantly comparing me to Lily. About the dinner. About the breakup. And how small and replaceable it had made me feel. I didn't even realize how much I'd been holding in until I finished talking. Daniel listened the entire time without interrupting. When I finished, he shook his head. That's messed up. I laughed a little. Yeah, I guess it is. Then he said something simple that hit me harder than I expected. You deserve better than that. For some reason, hearing someone say that out loud made my chest feel lighter. We sat there quietly for a moment. Then Daniel took another sip of his drink and said something that completely caught me off guard. Can I admit something? Sure. He hesitated for a second. I used to have the biggest crush on you in high school. I stared at him. What? He laughed awkwardly. Yeah, like, huge crush. I genuinely had no idea. I liked you too, I said automatically. Daniel blinked. Wait, seriously? Yes. I thought it was obvious. We both started laughing, because apparently two teenagers had spent years liking each other without either of us realizing the other felt the same way. But then Daniel's expression became more serious. When I moved away for college, I actually missed you a lot, he admitted. And then later I saw you post pictures with your boyfriend, meaning Ethan. So I figured I should probably let it go. The way he said that made my heart do something weird. Then he looked at me for a moment before speaking again. If things had been different, I think I would have dated you. There was a quiet moment between us after he said that. And the surprising thing was, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I felt happy. Because unlike Ethan's family situation, this felt genuine. No comparisons. No expectations. Just two people being honest. So I said the first thing that came to mind. Things are different now. Daniel looked at me carefully. You just got out of a relationship. I know. I don't want to be a rebound. You're not. He studied my face for a moment. Then he smiled. Are you saying you want to go on a date? I nodded. Yes. And that's how it started. Daniel and I took things slowly at first. Coffee dates. Walks through the city. Dinner with friends. But the difference between this relationship and my previous one was honestly unbelievable. Daniel respected me. He listened. He never made me feel like I was competing with someone from his past. After about a month together, I realized something. I was happier than I had been in a long time. Which brings us to the Ethan situation. Apparently, he eventually realized I wasn't just throwing a tantrum. Because he started texting me again. First it was casual messages. Hey, how have you been? Then it turned into apologies. I think we should talk. I ignored most of them. But then one day he showed up at my apartment building. Unfortunately for him, that happened to be the same day Daniel was visiting. When Ethan saw us walking toward the entrance together, the look on his face was pure shock. I sighed. What are you doing here? He looked between me and Daniel. Who is this? That's none of your business. His expression changed. You're already dating someone else? I stayed calm. You and I broke up. Yeah, but nothing, I interrupted. You don't get to act like you still have a say in my life. Daniel stayed quiet the whole time, which I appreciated. Ethan tried arguing for a few minutes, but eventually left. I thought that would be the end of it. But there was one final awkward situation. A week later, I planned to visit my parents. I wanted to tell them about Daniel and introduce them properly. What I forgot to mention beforehand was that Ethan and I had broken up. So when Daniel and I arrived at my parents' house, guess who happened to be there? Ethan. Apparently, he had stopped by to talk to my dad about something. The moment he saw Daniel standing next to me, his face went pale. My mom looked confused. What's going on? So we all sat down at the table, and I explained everything. That Ethan and I had broken up. That I had started seeing Daniel. My parents were surprised at first, but then something really nice happened. My dad laughed. My parents had known him since we were teenagers. My mom smiled. Oh, we always liked you. They started talking about how polite Daniel had always been growing up, how respectful he was, how they remembered us hanging out in high school. Meanwhile, Ethan sat there silently, and I could literally see the realization on his face. For the first time, he was experiencing what I had felt for a year. Being compared. Being replaced in someone's story. After a few minutes, he quietly stood up. I should go. No one stopped him. He left and never contacted me again after that. And honestly, that was the best possible ending, because now I'm with someone who actually values me. Daniel and I have been together for several months now, and things are going great. His parents were thrilled when they heard we were dating. My parents adore him. Most importantly, I feel respected, loved, and like I'm finally someone's first choice, not a replacement.